you speaker. Always wigs me out. Reverend Ken began inviting Reverend Amy Garber to speak at Thanksgiving, and I am honored to continue the tradition. Amy is a psychic, a medical intuitive, a Reiki master, a conscious channeler for her master guide, Polonius, who works with her entire spirit team. She aids people in their path by consulting with their higher self, soul, spirit guides, and angels. And that's, I have Reverend Marie here who works with angels. Often Amy will impart intuitive medical information and spiritual teachings as well. Amy also offers past life healing regressions, trained by Constance Joy Hart, who was trained by Denise Lynn. Amy also teaches intuitive development classes at the Enlightened Soul Expo, at the Enlightened Soul Center, and has taught at the Ann Arbor Public Schools Rec and Education, continuing education programs. So please, let's welcome Reverend Amy Garber.
Thank you, Lisa. Not quite. Student Reverend.
Student Reverend.
Ooh, I can see myself.
All right. I know.
Oh, how's my hair? Yeah, when you get on Zoom and it's always about your hair and looking at how you're holding yourself. So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I've done several Thanksgivings, and luckily Spirit gives me a new perspective. When I'm asked to speak, I start asking, okay, what's the topic going to be and what am I going to do? And at one point they even, I was getting the message that, oh, you could channel. You don't need to prepare. And I was like, oh, no, we're going to prepare. I didn't get invited to channel. I think if I were hosting and a speaker told me, oh, I'm just going to channel, I may or may not, receive that gratefully. And gratitude is purpose today. So the topic that came to me to speak on is gratitude is not taking things for granted. I didn't even have to consult my previous lectures to know what this was about and what I needed to say. Thanksgiving is certainly, it's the annual time of the year to be reminded to be grateful. If you aren't on a regular basis being reminded, but I got an extra reminder last month. So as Lisa was saying, I own and run the Enlightened Soul Center in Ann Arbor, and we moved to a bigger building in mid-October, and I'm running around trying to set up. And one day we were walking in, me and one of my students who's been assisting me, and this large spider walked in with us. And I see it, I swear to God, I don't think I'm exaggerating, although, when you get under stress, you might be exaggerating a little, but I swear it was like as big as a scorpion and the same color. And I was like, what? Now, I'm a spiritualist. Even though I was ordained not in a spiritualist church, I was ordained with the Order of Melchizedek through the Sanctuary of the Beloved in New York. Reverend Dan Chesbrough comes around the country to ordain people. But I'm a spiritualist in practice. I'm not a Buddhist, so I do kill. I will tell the spiders, either you stay out of the building or hide from me. Otherwise, you're asking to be transitioned. That's just, but if they're bigger, I'm going to try to capture them. So I already had this cardboard and a cup, even though we had barely moved in. I had my spider catching equipment. And so when this thing ran in with us, I ran to get the spider catching stuff. And I caught my foot on something and I tripped and fell really hard right on my knee. It was one of those things where, because I caught my foot, I wasn't prepared, which is probably good because I didn't put out my hands or I probably would have sprained my wrists. So anyway, everything, I fell on my knee really, really hard. It's a hard floor, they're not carpet. And I'm like trying to do Reiki and I'm like, oh, in pain. And student was saying, you know, do you have some ice? Like, what should I do? And I was like, get the spider. Keep your eyes on the spider. Get it. So she took the cardboard and she got it out of there. And then we attended to my knee, but my knee was really messed up. And it's still in the healing process. I have a bandage on, but you can't tell probably, but it's a million times better than it was at first, you know. But I had an opportunity to realize how I take my physical health, even my walking, for granted. Because for a while there, I had a brace on it, and then I was, you know, walking funny to you know, favor the knee, and then that caused other issues in my leg and, you know, all this stuff. And I was getting worse and worse for a little while there, until Spirit helped me kind of figure it out. And then I went to my friend who does cranial sacral and some other healing stuff. But yeah, I was like, gosh, I feel so grateful now for the times when I could walk easily and not have pain and not have a problem, right? It's like, wow, I take a lot of stuff for granted. So that just stuck with me. And then the topic for today's lecture, that just seemed completely obvious, you know. So, you know, a reminder in Thanksgiving of being grateful for the obvious things. Oh, I've got to, you know, I usually, when I go to sleep, I thank the universe. I have a house, a roof over my head. I have a car that works, you know, I have loving people around me. I have the center, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, to take for granted, or to be thankful for things that I might also take for granted, like, oh, you know, I can walk, I can breathe, I can write, all these other things, was a nice wake-up call. Somebody's little alarm is going off. If somebody can't hear it, they might want to check themselves. Anyway, it's an alert. It's perfectly timed. It's like, wake up. We have to wake up and be grateful for the things that are in our lives, right? So there's the physical health. And you may have already heard that message before. You know, certainly when I get a cold or a flu or something like that, and that's so rare nowadays, that when I do start feeling sick, I'm like, oh boy, oh, I long for the time, oh, when I could just wake up and have all this energy and feel so good, instead of like, oh, I'm sick, you know. So those reminders maybe are a little more obvious. But what about appreciating other people in our lives and not taking them for granted? You know, I'm sure if I ask you just to close your eyes for a moment, and who are you grateful for? Who pops up into your mind right away? You know, just silently, you can acknowledge that somebody came to your mind. And maybe you don't let that person know how grateful you are for them in your life. You know? And some of you, I'm being told, may be surprised even by who pops up. Maybe it's somebody who isn't in your close circle, who you wouldn't have thought of first if we were rationally, you know, doing a worksheet on it or something, you know. So even somebody who might provide a challenge in our lives is a reminder or a spiritual growth opportunity, you know, all these things, right? So again, I had a reminder recently, I should say actually my mother. So my mom's 89 years old, you know, she's getting up there, and she's getting to the point where she's saying, or she has for quite a while, gotten to that point where, you know, it's like, all my friends are gone, you know, which is kind of sad. I'm like, oh, Mom, it just means you have more younger people around you. You've got me and my sister, you know, your children and your grandchildren, and, you know, there's other people to fill in there. But she just found out that another one of her friends passed away. Now, granted, this friend was in her 90s. I mean, she was even quite older. But and during this past year, especially with the pandemic, when we haven't been able to go out, I certainly wasn't taking my mom out. I would say, well, you haven't talked to Stella in a long time. Why don't we try calling her? My mom would say, oh, another day. Oh, I'll get around it. Oh, I don't feel like it. Well, and then we found out that Stella passed away in 2020. So, you know, my mom was kind of taking for granted the fact that Stella will always be there, even though, you know, age might dictate kind of logically otherwise. Yeah, and she lost another friend this year too, that she found out about a few months ago. So, we never know. You don't have to be in your 90s to be expected to transition. And my mom isn't of the orientation like me, so I can't tell her, oh, go into meditation and connect with stone. Like, that isn't gonna work. But I could do it for her, But I started thinking about other people in my life, or maybe people that I've lost touch with, and I just know, my friend from college, yeah, we can text each other, even though she lives on the other side of the country, blah, blah, blah. But it's a good reminder not to take things for granted when we're focusing in this season on gratitude, right? Also, another thing kind of related to relationships and physical health is that my mom has been descending more and more into dementia over the years. Probably since 2014, it became really obvious. So it started to become obvious. And now, she has an aide 5 days a week. So she always has to have somebody there, my sister and I, on the weekend and stuff like that. So, and I noticed the loss of functioning over the weeks and months. She can still function. I mean, she still knows who we are and all this stuff. She can remember TV channels, the numbers for the cable, which I cannot. So, I give her some credit for some of that. But, I decided, instead of getting bummed out by what I'm noticing, the changes in her, I can be grateful and for what she does have and focus on that. I mean, she does still know who we are. She can function on her own. She can feed herself. She can use a microwave, all these different things. So it's important to look at that. I mean, I tend to be like, oh, the glass is half full anyway, kind of person. But in thinking about this time of year and gratitude and not taking things for granted, I'm like, yeah, I want to be grateful for what she can do right now, because the likelihood is it's going to change and be lost over time, and I try to tell her that too. One of my favorite quotes is attributed to the Buddha, that the cause of all suffering is the resistance to what is, the resistance to change or reality or, facts. And so instead of, allowing that to depress me, I'm very, very glad. I look forward to being able to see my mom. And like last week, she felt like going, well, we got her a booster shot, so she had to go out, but then she felt like going to the dollar store and getting cards, greeting cards. I'm like, good, okay, I mean, focusing on the positive, So another aspect of appreciation or gratitude that came to me is things, material things. And certainly, in a spiritual setting like this, we don't need to focus as much on material things, but let's face it, we are in physical form, we have physical bodies. We need to have a roof over our head, especially with the snow, things like that. And I haven't been so materialistic. I know my mom reminded me that when my sister got married and she was, registering for things, and like her dishes and her silver and stuff, silverware and stuff like that. My mom remembers me saying, my sister got so excited about getting the dishes, and apparently I said, they're just dishes. So I think I've probably been more, not so material most of my life, but in terms of appreciating, not taking things for granted and appreciating what we've got. There's this Sheryl Crow song. So I love music too. And I used to work in the music business for a short time after college. And there's a Sheryl Crow song that struck me when I first heard the lyric, and every time I do hear it. It's a song called Soak Up the Sun. I'm not going to sing it to you. Thought about that. It's like, well, I may or may not be good at this time on a Sunday morning. But the lyric that really struck me was, it's not having what you want, it's wanting what you've got. Yeah. And that still takes me back. And actually, I should credit her writing partner is Jeff Trott, I think his name is. So it was lyrics, either one of them wrote. And, you know, wanting what we've got and being appreciative of what we got instead of focusing on the lack is another important spiritual principle, right? That Thanksgiving can be expanded to include that. Like the adage about whatever we focus on expands. So there are abundance teachers like Esther Hicks, who channels the Abraham Hicks material, and The Secret, for better or worse, all kinds of Mary Mannon Morrissey I've studied, who's a prosperity teacher and coach. And you know, other spiritual traditions will also tell you that if you focus on lack, that's all you're going to see, and you're going to be like maybe vibrating at that level. We attract where we're at. So if we focus on what we do have and how grateful we are what we do have, even if we can't take the next step and focus on something that hasn't come to us yet, but we want to come to us, you know, that's an abundance lecture. That'll be a separate lecture. If we can focus on at least the abundance with what we do have, that will expand. You know, it's just a metaphysical physics principle, you know. Finally, abundance, not taking for granted spirit is like the fourth area that came to me in wanting to speak about this important idea today. And as Lisa mentioned in my introduction, I am known as a intuition teacher in Ann Arbor. So I had the privilege of taking a very long class in psychic development with Reverend Ken in the 90s. And I still quote from things that I learned from Reverend Ken and talk about him. That's why I try to encourage my students to come when I know Reverend Ken's going to be here so they can meet him in person. And so in terms of the spiritualist belief system that we have an inner band of 5 guides at least, and then there's more and more and more we can get. And I ask for spirit help all the time. I'm shameless about it now. I'm like, you know, and I may not even differentiate between angels. Like sometimes angels are the ones I'm asking, and which is funny because we wouldn't necessarily associate them with material things as much as, say, our Native American protector guide. But it's like, spirit, help me get this jar open, you know. I have a kind of finicky credit card swipe thingy. And until we got the nice wireless one where it's very foolproof and I don't have to do anything but stick the card in, I'm using this swiper and I'm uncoordinated anyway, I think. I don't know. And some of it's a swiper and some of it's me. And it would take forever, a million swipes. And I started saying out loud with the client there, the customer, you know, spirit, help me, you know, spirit, and then it would go through. So I even started demonstrating, look, I'm going to do this 5 times, and then I'm going to say, spirit, help me, boom, and it goes through. I'm like, why do we take our spirit guides for granted and others, you know, our departed loved ones, ascended masters, angels? When I open classes and circles, I call them all in, and they should know who is capable of what. If I don't have a particular one that I'm going to call on, I just use a generic term. And I tell my students, you don't need to have met your spirit guides. You don't need to know their names. You know, you can just say, spirit team, help me. Angels, help me. Spirit guides, help me. I'm telling you, it's just fabulous. I was trying to get a knife out of it. It was stuck in my dish drainer last night. And again, I was like, spirit, help me. And it came right out. So I can't explain it, but metaphysics is above or beyond physics. So that's my explanation. Belief and being in that vibration. So what I learned, one thing I remember learning in Reverend Ken's class, and it's on some of the handouts that I use, is when we call on our guides and angels, then thank them, you know, acknowledge them. And even in mediumship class and different things, if it's departed loved ones instead of guides, you know, any of those disembodied entities that we're working with, thank them for coming, thank them for helping, right? being grateful, and they're still feeling entities, and they want to be acknowledged, and they like being thanked. So not taking things for granted is a big theme for me this year, and I hope that has helped you. I would say in closing, it might even be obvious that the pandemic, such as it is, and the lockdown and the different things we're all going through, no matter what our belief systems, society as a whole, humanity at large, is being called upon to go within. I think it's just something that had to happen. Certainly when you're locked down in your home for 3-4 months or whatever, everything's curtailed. I think that is one blessing that has come out of this whole pandemic, because I know many people, and I get contacted by people seeking and Googling and finding the my center, the Enlightened Soul Center, because we also run classes and workshops and things, as well as now we have a store, we're open regular hours. A lot of people are seeking now and reevaluating, having gone within and changing their priorities, and in not taking things for granted. I think that's a very good response. And I hope you all are thriving in this challenging time. Thank you.